Coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter Podcast, the story of a woman who's been dealing with Sarc since 2004.
So I was diagnosed before I was even symptomatic.
In this episode of the Sarc Fighter Podcast, Andrea Maione shares her story of working hard to break through the setbacks sarcoidosis has thrown at her.
Yeah, so I definitely would have some breathing issues. I was exhausted. To be honest with you, now, dealing with everything I have now, I can't even believe that I did that.
It's all coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter Podcast.
This is the Sarc Fighter Podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello, this is episode 115 of the FSR Sarc Fighter Podcast. I'm your host, John Carlin. Thank you to Tyler for that wonderful intro. This episode is brought to you by aTyr Pharmaceuticals. To learn more about their new pulmonary sarcoidosis trial called EFZO-FIT, visit stopsarcoidosis.org/aTyr-trial. And of course, there's a link in the show notes. I do this podcast to help you kind of understand what's going on with you, to give you a sense of hope as you fight with this disease, the snowflake disease. It's different for everybody. It's unpredictable. You never know when the next symptom is going to pop up. And, so I just like to think of this podcast as the voice of sarcoidosis, and it's not just my voice, and particularly it's not my voice, it's your voice. It's the voice of all the Sarc fighters who have come on, the patients, the researchers, the clinicians, the pharmaceutical companies, of course, all the leadership at FSR. The idea is that all the information that I can gather every couple of weeks and put out there, I do, and then we've got some pretty interesting stories that people are willing to share that kind of tell you what's going on with their life as they deal with sarcoidosis. And then we've got folks out there who are raising money. And so in the last episode, my son Jonathan, who is a content creator for YouTube and social media, he is part of the Super Carlin brothers who have over 2 million followers on YouTube, which is a ton. But Jonathan joined me to talk about, he is doing a fundraiser for FSR he's growing a mustache. And so he is encouraging his followers, and they are legions, to encourage him to keep that mustache going by contributing to FSR. And they're doing it. Right? His followers can add a minute of growth for every $1 they donate to FSR. And as of June 4th, 2024, he still has the mustache, and he's raised a ton of money, $7,780 at last check. And he's still doing that. And he's doing that. He's got a KISS account, a Team KISS account with FSR, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. Out there, and again, there will be a link in the show notes. But by the way, Jonathan and his brother, my middle son Ben, host also, in addition to their YouTube channel, a highly successful Harry Potter-based podcast called Through the Gryffindor. And for the last 2 nights, they have been recording those podcasts in front of live, sold-out audiences in clubs in Boston and New York City. And so I texted Jonathan this morning, and he was walking around Times Square. I'm kind of proud. I'm the proud papa. I grew up as a broadcaster, and now they're taking on the next generation of public-facing media. And for them, that's social media through their podcasts and their YouTube channel and their all the TikTok and Instagram, and you name it, they're there. And it's working, and Jonathan's raising money because I have sarcoidosis. And so thanks again, son. I really appreciate that. And then there's Royce Robertson, also doing a fundraiser. He is a fellow Sarc fighter, and he is riding his bike on the Erie Canal towpath across New York State. I think it's called the Empire Trail. but it essentially follows the Erie Canal. And he's doing this in the summer of 2024 with a group of cyclists. They are riding, as I speak, from Syracuse to Albany. Actually, they're done. They're done with that ride from, that was May 28th through the 30th. Again, following the old Erie Canal. But then they're going to resume it, and they're going to pick up in Albany and then turn south and ride all the way to New York City. And they'll be doing that between August 6th and the 8th. In total, that's 340 miles of what Royce called kicking Sarc into submission. And according to his KISS account, so far he's raised $7,705. And obviously he is still going. I've been texting back and forth with Royce this morning, but that's the update as I have it. And then also another recent guest, Matthew Hall, was set to compete in a half Ironman competition in mid-May, also an FSR fundraiser. And half Ironman, if you're keeping track at home, that's where you swim over a mile. I think it's 1.2 miles. You then bicycle 54 miles. Then you run a half marathon, 13.1 miles. And so I'll need to check in with Matthew to see how he did. But I know FSR issued a news release on his efforts, and so I can put a link to that in the show notes as well. And speaking of FSR, they've also issued another news release. There's a new initiative to get greater minority representation in clinical trials for sarcoidosis. This is a big problem. We've talked about this a lot on the podcast. But blacks and African Americans are much more likely, I think twice as likely, to have sarcoidosis, but less likely than whites to seek treatment or to participate in clinical trials. And obviously it's important for all of us that we make it easier for that to happen. So it's called the Coalition for Clinical Trial Equity, and it is part of the Ignore No More initiative that FSR has been doing. And it aims to increase representation of Black and African American patients in clinical trials, thereby improving health outcomes. I'm reading from the news release now. Thereby improving health outcomes for marginalized communities. And the news release just continues, and I'll just give you the cliff notes here. Lack of diversity in clinical trials hinders the development of effective treatments that cater to the needs of all populations, especially those most severely impacted. Furthermore, it's estimated, this is interesting, it's estimated that increasing representation could decrease overall healthcare expenditures by as much as $1.2 trillion over 3 years. And that is footnoted. I don't know what study that is citing, but it is a clinically based study. And then there's just a nice quote here from Mary McGowan, the CEO and Chief Executive Officer of FSR, CEO. Without diverse representation, clinical research risks neglecting vital insights and life-saving treatments for those who need them the most, Mary said. And she continues, the coalition will leverage the extensive experience and diverse professional expertise of its leaders to drive forward actionable strategies. By increasing clinical trial participation among Black Americans, we can advance therapies, curtail medical costs, and enhance the quality of life for those affected by chronic illness. And I'll put a link if you want to read the entire news release in the show notes. That also got picked up by Sarcoidosis News, which is carrying it. So the point is that if this podcast is to be the voice of sarcoidosis, it needs to be that for all people. And we need to look at everybody who's impacted by sarcoidosis. And clearly, the leadership was much smarter than me at FSR, sees this as an important initiative, and I'm happy to pass along that information to you. As for me, I've been getting in shape. I'm getting out on my bike a lot. I've been slowly, as the weather's improved, been amping up my miles, and my goal for June is to ride 100 miles every week. I'm in training for a 400-mile ride that I'll be doing over 8 days coming up in early July. I'll talk more about that in the future, but for right now, if I can ride 100 miles every week, that should get me in the right place and for that event, and I am off to a good start. Speaking of which, since the last podcast, I have traveled to the Cleveland Clinic for meetings with my doctors in person. They did a new MRI on my spine because I have neurosarc with a mass basically at the back of my neck, and everything is looking really good. I had some unexplained knee pain one weekend. I was just walking along, just the pain was so great, I just fell down right in the lobby of a hotel. It's so far still unexplained, but it has come and gone. I met with a rheumatologist there for the first time, and there's no evidence of sarcoidosis. So maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I just had a bad day. But the good news for me is that for now, sarcoidosis is being kept at bay. So I promised you an update, and there it is. In the meantime, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. So I just want to ask you to help me reach more people and grow the show. If you would share it on your social media, give it a nice review wherever you get your podcasts, and I do appreciate that. Coming up, my interview with Andrea Maione. She will tell us how she has been fighting sarcoidosis and long COVID all at the same time. It's a heartwarming interview. You don't want to miss it, and it's coming up next here on the FSR Sarc Fighter Podcast.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter Podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter Podcast. Welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter Podcast, and joining me now is Andrea. Andrea, you got to say your last name for me because I don't want to butcher.
That's okay. Maione.
Okay, Maione. Got it. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah. So you are speaking to us. You're in Huntington, New York, which is on Long Island, outside New York City.
Yes.
And you have had sarcoidosis since 2004?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So it was thought to be lymphoma in my lungs, which I hear is common for doctors to kind of, see that. And I was diagnosed by just like a routine fluke breast MRI, believe it or not.
Oh.
Yeah. So because breast cancer runs in the family, they did an MRI and saw that there were enlarged lymph nodes in my chest cavity. And then I was diagnosed by median stenoscopy.
Wow. So how long did it take them to figure out that what you had was not lymphoma and that it was Sarc? Because it's often misdiagnosed that way.
Yeah. So a good 6 months.
Okay. And what did they do? So they started giving you, like, I can refer to what I've heard before. Usually the doctors start treating one thing and it doesn't react. And then they're like, something else is going on here. Was that your case?
So with me, believe it or not, I didn't have symptoms, any breathing issues, any joint pain or anything until 2010. So I was diagnosed before I was even symptomatic.
Wow. And so when the symptoms came on, what were you feeling? What was happening?
So extreme fatigue, shortness of breath, wheezing, and joint pain. I noticed that my hand strength wasn't as strong. I was just moving slower. Yeah.
All right. And so you went to the doctor and you told them these things. Did they put two and two together pretty quickly?
They did. Yeah, they did. I actually went to Mount Sinai in Manhattan.
Okay.
Which is actually the hospital that I'm the community outreach leader with now, coming full circle.
Right.
And I saw, from what I understand, was a very prominent sarcoidosis specialist, Dr. Alvin Tierstein. who sadly passed away.
Okay. And
Um,
yeah, and so how did that go?
it went great. I mean, he was exceptional. And, just explained to me a little bit more about the disease, how rare it was, and how they don't really know where it comes from or why, but he was trying to hone in on it. He spent really his whole life studying this disease.
Wow.
Sadly, not long after I saw him, maybe it was a year or more, I had sadly heard the news that he had a heart attack and passed away at his desk.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
somebody on the team picked up your care. What was your first line of defense? Was it prednisone?
So they wanted to put me on prednisone, but John, I have to say, I tried it right for about a month, and it didn't agree with me at all.
No
So,
kidding.
right? I know. I don't have
Yeah.
to tell you. Yeah.
Right.
So and you know what it is? My dad was on prednisone from the age of 40 until he passed away at 59. They thought he was an adult asthmatic, and we don't really know exactly what he had, but in the end, he passed away of cancer in his heart
Huh.
in 1997.
All right. That was your dad. So, are you trying to tell me there was a connection between prednisone and your dad's heart trouble?
I was thinking either, could be that, or that my dad was misdiagnosed as an asthmatic, and instead it was sarcoid.
Oh, yeah, that could be.
It could be, but it was so long ago, and the tests weren't the same. So we don't really know if that's what he had, but that's my suspicion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
it went to cardiac sarcoid.
Yeah. Now you live on Long Island, and I've talked to some other folks on Long Island. Is there any suggestion that rates of sarcoidosis are higher there because you're near the city, or the or the terrorist attacks or anything like that? Is there any connection there?
So I've heard that mentioned many times, especially because 9/11,
Right.
and from what I understand, a lot of first responders were then diagnosed, unfortunately, of sarcoidosis pulmonary and of their skin. That was the first question that I was asked when I arrived at Mount Sinai and was symptomatic. Where were you during 9/11? And I was nowhere near there. So, it's such a mystery, John, and it's so frustrating.
Right. But nowhere near there, as in you weren't in the city, but when you're at home, you're 40 miles in the air as a crow flies. So I mean, I'm just speculating here for sure, but I mean, that dust cloud, whatever was in it that seems to have caused a higher prevalence of Sarc could have passed over you. Yes.
I guess, yeah, it could have, John, absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely could have. But I guess there's no way for them to really tell for sure.
Sure. But that was I was curious if they asked you about that, or if you thought there was any connection. Did they have any idea where or you might have been exposed to something that triggered sarcoidosis?
They really don't. They really don't. And to be honest with you, I stopped asking because it brings me so much angst.
Right?
It
Right.
does.
Yeah. I get it totally. So how did the disease progress after you had that initial onset? You were taking prednisone, it didn't agree with you. What happened next?
So then, I honestly I've been trying, before COVID hit me, I've been trying to fight it as naturally as possible. That's when I decided to go see an acupuncturist, maybe change my diet a little bit, and I joined a running team that I was with for 11 years and became a long distance runner. And I noticed as the miles increased and as I became more conditioned, I didn't need my inhaler as much.
Okay, good for you. So getting in shape and eating right does help.
Yeah, it did. It did for many, many years. And then when COVID came in 2020, in the spring of 2020, I'm not sure if Kathy mentioned this to you or Mary, but yeah, I suffered from COVID pneumonia twice in 2020.
COVID pneumonia. So was that like the kind where you were in the hospital? And tell me about that.
Yeah, so basically, I, believe it or not, fought it twice from home on handheld oxygen, both times for 6 weeks each time. So it was May of 2020 and then December of 2020. And Mount Sinai, one of Dr. Tierstein's understudies, Dr. Maria Padilla, was treating me remotely. She had urged me quite strongly, Andrea, do not go into the hospital because with this disease and COVID, you will not make it out.
Right. Boy, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm sorry to get a little emotional. It's still after 4 years. Doesn't seem like that was me.
Right. So you are at home and you're breathing with this oxygen bottle. Who's taking care of you?
I was living in a different town at that time. I've only been in Huntington for almost 2 years. So I was in an apartment by myself in Mineola, which is closer to the city. It's western Nassau County. And I was taking care of myself because it was really the heart of COVID when it first came and, hit us. So I was completely isolated and alone.
And did the sarcoidosis contribute to your susceptibility to COVID or the complications from it?
From what I've been told, and I'm in an aftercare programs and long COVID rehabilitation. I was actually featured in our local newspaper in November of 2023. I was on the cover, believe it or not, for my journey and how I've been willing to help the community with finding out, some more information. But yes, sarcoidosis absolutely in combination with COVID created almost like a perfect storm, John, I could say.
Wow. So describe to us what it was like, what a day was like, sort of as that progressed, and you're by yourself, breathing off the oxygen bottle, and you're in your apartment. Are you just bedridden? I mean, what's going on at that point?
So I was exhausted. I lost my senses, my taste and smell. I was very disoriented and depressed. And I was also just, so the handheld oxygen wasn't as needed. So I didn't need to use
Okay.
it 24/7, thankfully. And just to backtrack 2 seconds, how I was diagnosed was a chest x-ray. That's how they determined it was COVID pneumonia and just not regular COVID.
Got it. COVID pneumonia. Okay.
Because
And
it actually entered my lung. So those were
right.
the people that were put on the ventilator.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the I had a friend who pulled through, but he was on the vent for, I don't know, I want to say 2 months, and all the indications were that he wasn't going to make it, but he did. Um, so you're treating yourself, but you don't want to go to the hospital because it's a germ factory, and you're right in that concentrated area there in New York where people it's just hard to get away from people there,
Yeah.
right? And especially if your hospital's in the city.
Yeah. So I was being treated by Mount Sinai in, on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. But, we came to realize I knew this obviously because I lived there, but I was 7 or 8 blocks from a major hospital on Long Island called NYU Langone. And half of the people in my apartment complex were residents to the hospital.
Okay.
So, and I shared a doorway with some of them, mailboxes. So we don't know if that's where I got it from. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of germs around then, for sure. Going
Yeah.
back and forth from that hospital to your apartment. And so I'm curious, what medications were you taking when you were fighting that?
So believe it or not, they just put me on an antibiotic. I'm trying to remember it was just like a regular, I couldn't even believe it that this is all that they gave me. They just put me on a cold pill.
Huh.
Uh, yeah, because they really didn't know what to do.
Wow.
They
And
really didn't.
who was checking on you?
So, I mean, one of the pulmonologists at Mount Sinai, friends and family, but nobody could see me. Nobody could come see me. And everyone was running scared. So this was, May 8th of 2020.
Yeah.
Everyone was running scared. Nobody even wanted to go to the stores. I had lost my job in March of 2020. I got to be honest, it was terrible, John. It was terrible.
Wow. You lost your job because why?
So they were cutting back. I worked for a firm. I was a project manager. I've been a project manager on and off for 20, 25 years. So I worked for a legal administration firm.
All right.
So they lost a few accounts, and here I am, middle of March of 2020, where everybody was sent home to work remotely, and they let go of a few of us from the Long Island office and the Seattle office.
Wow. So that was just COVID related layoffs.
Exactly. COVID related layoffs.
Yeah.
And
Oh man. Oh God.
so,
So and yeah, that you were just in a tough spot. So I don't know, were you binge watching Netflix? What were you doing to pass the time?
I was trying to binge watch Netflix. I was trying to feed myself. I was exhausted. I've never felt so tired in my whole life.
Right.
And now I have something called long COVID.
Oh, you still have the long COVID? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't want to jump ahead, and make things confusing. But believe it or not, then I got it again in December of 2020 when I tried to go back to work.
So how far apart were your two episodes?
So it was May 8th of 2020, and it was December. I remember the exact time I got it to. It was December 21st of 2020. All of a sudden, I wake up. I go to have my flavored iced coffee because that's my favorite. Can't taste it at all.
Man,
And I said,
so
how could
4 days
this be?
before Christmas, right?
4 days before Christmas, I said, how could this possibly be happening to me again?
Yeah. Or maybe it never left. It was just hiding in a back corner somewhere. And, who knows? I mean, I always use a very layperson's way of looking at health so that people can think and follow and understand. And maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
All
But
right.
you're right.
But yeah, so it came back, and how long did it last the second time?
So the second time it was a good, I would say 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, it was just as bad, if not worse, because my body was still so frail from the first time. So here I am with a new job now. I started that in August. So I got better. I started jogging again. I mean, I have pictures of the whole journey. And got up to 5 miles. I was like, okay, my lungs are a little better. I didn't think I had long COVID. I take this job with a physical therapy company as basically like a marketing manager. So I was like driving around, I had to work. I didn't have a choice, so I was driving around to different locations to try and build up their client base, their marketing. And one of the physical therapists, the head of the physical therapy department, he was positive and I didn't know it.
Hmm.
And I was wearing, and I mean, my hand to God, and I was wearing a mask.
Wow.
But this was the 2020 version.
Yeah.
It was very potent.
All you can do is all you can do, right? Man.
Yeah.
Well, let's back up just a little
Yeah.
bit. I want to unpack your running career
Okay.
Because I would say, because we talked about the benefits of that fitness and how you sort of put your sarcoidosis symptoms at bay. And you said were you already a runner when you joined the running club, or were you like couch to 5K person?
I was, yeah, couch to 5K person. Yeah, I'd
Really?
never ran. I mean, I had always played, I was always active, I was always in sports. And I was, I started doing spinning at the gym, spinning classes, because I
Spin
said, oh,
class, sure. Love it.
it's got to be great for my lungs. Maybe this will help the sarcoid before it comes at me. Because
Mm-hmm.
scary with the diagnosis. So, why I really joined this running club is because we fundraised for a different cancer every year. That was that was our why, we called it.
Okay.
So, and it was underfunded cancers that we raised money for,
All right. All right. I
which
love that. Then
which
you,
would
so
take
you would say, I'm going to go out and run a 5K. Please sponsor me. And then we'll send that to XYZ Cancer.
exactly. So we were fundraising for Northwell Health Hospital system. So whenever we chose whatever specific cancer it was, 1 year it was gastro cancer, 1 year it was childhood brain cancer. So basically, there were two events that we would get involved in each year. One was a relay, which was so much fun. And then the other one was you could either do a 5K or a half marathon. So depending on how I felt, I would try to go the full gusto, and do the half marathon.
Right. Wow, that's fantastic. So for somebody who wasn't a runner, all of a sudden you're out there running 13.1 miles.
Yeah, I ran 16 half marathons and then the one full in 2019. And I've been told by so many doctors, so many specialists, that if I didn't run the 2019 New York City Marathon, I probably wouldn't have made it through everything.
Because your lungs were so strong, you'd increased your lung capacity and all the things that happen to a very physically fit person.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, and you weren't doing it for yourself at that point. You were just doing it. You do
Yeah, I
you
was
do
doing
you the fitness for yourself, but I mean, you weren't doing it to fight sarcoidosis in particular.
no. I mean, yes, in the grand picture I was, but the feeling and the reward that I got for helping patients, because we had a gala once a year. Um, and there was a specific patient that we would be running for that had that specific strain of cancer. So we were really running for that person. We even got to meet the person, meet the doctor. I mean, John, it was incredible.
Yeah, I actually have had that experience as a runner. I had a sister when I was very young who passed from leukemia, and
Ah,
so I ran 6 different marathons for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and it was the same thing. You would run for a particular patient, and the patients would sometimes come to the runs, on the training runs, or even the marathons. It's just amazing and so gratifying to be able to do it and make that personal connection, right? Uh,
it makes all the difference. Wow, John, I mean, you ran 6 full marathons?
well, actually, I ran 10, but 6 of them
Oh
were
my
for
God.
leukemia. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my God, John, that's amazing.
yeah.
That's so
No,
cool.
but because of sarcoidosis, I can't run anymore. So, because my legs just don't function. I've got it on my spinal cord, and anyway,
Oh, God.
that's neither here nor there, but I totally understand what you're going through, and I totally understand the health benefits, right? But because I can't run anymore, regular listeners know that I ride my bike a lot,
Oh,
and
that's
I've
great.
also had doctors tell me the same thing that you heard, right? That
Yeah.
the level of fitness that I maintain has helped me keep this thing at bay, and that's the best you can hope for.
Yeah.
Right. So, how did the marathon go for you? I mean, because I'm testimony that if you think that a half marathon is half of the marathon, that's wrong. The marathon halfway mark for me was always 20 miles, and
Yes.
and then the hardest part were the last six.
My coach, Joe, who was the president of our running foundation, it was called Step by Step Charitable Foundation. He always said, Andrea, marathon starts at 20 miles. Never think differently. So when I was training, and it took me a full year to train because it was difficult for me, I had trouble getting past 18 miles. My
Mm-hmm.
body was just exhausted and almost like shut down. So I really didn't think I was going to be able to. Oh, hold on. Okay, sorry. I thought I lost you there for a second.
No,
The
no,
phone.
no, we're still good. Yeah. So you didn't
Okay.
think you'd be able to?
I didn't think I'd be able to do it. So, but I followed through and I did it. And my coach Joe actually came to the New York City Marathon and was waiting at mile 18 in case I had any issues, and he was going to take me the way through.
Wow. But you got to mile 18 and you just kept on going?
I kept on going. I was going at a, fairly slow pace because it took me 5 hours and 49 minutes to finish.
Well, that's not, I mean, that's like mid-pack, right?
Yeah. It's like mid-pack, but it was tough.
Yeah.
It felt like forever. It felt
Uh-huh.
like, it
Yeah.
felt like forever.
So are you walking a little bit along the way?
Oh, yeah. I took some walking breaks. So I would run, I would jog about 2 miles, and I would say like a 10 and a half, 11 minute, and then I would, probably take like a 15 to 30-second walk and then gear up again to go the distance. Cause I really, I couldn't, there was no way I'd be able to finish if I just kept running.
All right. And then when you walk me through it when you saw that finish line.
Wow. So I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain. I was like, is that a mirage or or is that the finish line? I think though, John, the best part, and you can relate to this, is when you get to the 20-mile marker. I don't know if you ran New York City.
I
If you
didn't.
ran, okay. But so you get to the Bronx because that's where the 20-mile marker is. And there's a sign right above this little like bridge or landing, and it says, congratulations, you made it past the wall. And
Which is 20 miles. 20
which
miles
is
is the
20
wall
miles.
of marathoners, right? Yeah.
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 So and that year I got an Apple Watch, and in order to communicate with my teammates while I was running, because I knew I'd be running this alone, because there were two other women were running it that year, and they were, much better shape, faster, healthy. So I remember seeing the text messages come up on my watch, and one woman who always believed me, because there's this saying, if you have one person in a room that believes in you, you can do anything. And I really doubted myself because of all the symptoms we had. And I saw a text come through, because everybody was tracking us. And she said, I knew Andrea could do it. She doesn't know how to fail. So it was, the emotions are, bigger than the event itself.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, all I can say is that I've been there and I know exactly what you're saying. So while you were training for the marathon, were you having any flares, any sarcoidosis related symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely, in more pain than I felt like, other runners were. It took me more to get to a certain specific point than a regular person. Like I always knew that. And for me, I was like, if I just keep pushing, or if I just keep trying, I'm going to get there. And yeah, so I definitely would have some breathing issues. I was exhausted. To be honest with you, now, dealing with everything I have now, I can't even believe that I did that.
Right. Right. So how are you now? How have things progressed for you after everything you had related to COVID and post marathon? So now it's been what, 3 years, going on four.
Yeah.
How has your disease progressed?
So, um, I'm just so much more exhausted. The joint pain is more constant. Um, the wheezing is worse. Instead of just having one inhaler, I have two inhalers. I need to use a nebulizer more often. My gait is off, like the way my balance and the way that I walk. So I just saw my third neurologist in this journey since post COVID, who, and I don't have to tell you, they don't believe, they're like, well, I mean, what kind of symptoms do you really have from sarcoid? And, what was it, was it biopsied? And, every time you go, it's almost like you have to rehash the whole thing. And it's like, don't you see my 10 other medical records here?
Right, right.
Not to sound, jaded or angry, but so yeah, there's been a lot more complications. I have a cane that I use occasionally. Um, it's been tough.
So you're seeing neurologists. Have they figured out where in your body and your nervous system that sarcoid is presenting?
So they haven't. I actually just saw one yesterday, believe it or not, and she wants to do. Even though I already had a brain MRI since COVID, because there's the extreme brain fog that goes on post COVID, and then I think coupled with sarcoidosis, it's even worse. But I did have a spine MRI, and they diagnosed me with spondylosis.
Okay.
So I had a spine epidural just this past Friday, the 31st, on my lower lumbar.
Okay.
It feels a little bit better, but it's not 100%. The pain isn't gone. But they told me that really has nothing to do with sarcoidosis.
What do they think it is?
They just think it's a degenerative disc condition. I said, yeah, but where would I be getting it from?
Yeah, right,
It just all of a sudden attacked a 50-year-old woman out of nowhere,
right,
who was, so it has to be, I believe, coupled with the sarcoidosis and long COVID. I mean, it
right,
just
right.
doesn't, so
So your
I don't know.
joints are aching and so that sounds like a rheumatologist to me. Have you seen a rheumatologist also?
Yes. So I saw a rheumatologist, and he told me that I have fibromyalgia
Mm,
on top of, that's what he thinks.
you don't want to hear that.
No, you don't want to hear that. No.
No.
So they introduced Celebrex to my daily medication.
Okay.
I see a pain management doctor now as well.
So
It's yeah, it's a
yeah,
lot.
what all are you taking right now? Celebrex and what else?
So I take Celebrex, and I also take something called venlafaxine. It's something that they said can help with pain.
Okay. But you're
Yeah,
not taking any of the regular menu of sarcoidosis drugs, no methotrexate, no prednisone, none of that.
not as of yet. Because I honestly, even though it's a little embarrassing to say, I get very agitated when I start taking prednisone.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they called me Honest John at work because I would tell people exactly what I thought. Like there was no filter. And
Yeah.
that was, for over a year. I don't know how I didn't get fired, but a lot of people that I'd wanted to, a lot of people knew that I had some issues with them. You
Well, here's
know?
the thing, like, I'm kind of like that already. I'm
Okay.
very straightforward, but I try not to be mean, but so the prednisone just exacerbated it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
They haven't mentioned going on methotrexate as of yet. This last neurologist that I saw, she wants to do a spinal tap, a brain MRI, and a cervical MRI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Those are, I think that's a good step. I mean, that sounds consistent with everything that I've heard, and it
Okay.
sounds like somebody's taking you seriously with
Yeah.
respect to your neuro condition. Um, and that's, I was misdiagnosed. I had a mass right here at the base of my neck, and they finally went in and biopsied that because they thought it was cancer. They thought I had a tumor on my spinal cord. But it took forever to figure that out. They were treating me for all kinds of different things and it wasn't working. And meanwhile, my legs are getting numb and there's no explanation and yada, yada, yada. So you just got to keep looking until you find it. And in your case, you've got so many things going on. It's like, how do you know what's sarcoidosis and what's something else?
Exactly. Yeah.
But you did have a lung biopsy, and that's where they found it initially, right?
Yes. So that's where they found it initially through the median sinoscopy. They went in and deflated my lung, moved over my rib, and took tissue out.
Right. Okay. And so now you are volunteering to help other Sarc patients. So you're a community outreach leader. Tell everybody, because we've been on this podcast. I remember when they first started recruiting for that position all around the country, and one of the things that FSR and I did with this podcast was try and recruit people. So you did it.
Yeah. I contacted them in December because I'm filing for disability,
Okay.
which is tough to get. I don't really know if I'm going to get it. And I wanted to, join and give back because I loved volunteering when we had the running group. I felt so fulfilled helping others. And it was such an honor to go to the Cleveland Clinic for training. It was incredible. The facility there is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if,
Mm-hmm.
if you've had the pleasure of seeing it, but
Oh no, I get all my treatment at Cleveland.
you do. Okay,
Yes, I
wow.
do. Yes. Yeah. So you
Wow.
went to Cleveland and tell us about that.
Oh, I met amazing, amazing people from all over the country who totally get it and are struggling in a lot of different ways. So it's difficult to see. But meeting the staff there at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Culver and everyone, they were just, I mean, it was like meeting stars.
Kind of is, isn't it?
It is, and
Kind of
they're
is.
so willing to help us.
Right. Right. Um, so what do you do in your role there as a community outreach leader? How's that work out?
So I'm really just starting it. I mean, they onboarded me and then they sent me to Cleveland, like literally weeks later. So one of our goals is to get a support group meeting monthly together. So
Okay.
we're working on that. There's two other women on Long Island who have been volunteers for a while that I'm working with, which is great because they kind of know the ropes. And then we're talking about doing a bowling fundraiser
Okay.
called Strike for Sarcoidosis,
I love it.
which is really cute. So I've been getting pricing from these kind of like rock and bowl bowling alleys
Okay.
to
And
see.
are they must do fundraisers all the time, so they're willing to work with you, right?
Yes, yeah. So we're getting those prices, and we're going to present them back to the staff at FSR. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And then people bowl, and do you just sponsor a bowler for $10 per game or so much per pin? How does that work?
I think it's probably sponsoring bowlers per game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for a little bit of feedback from FSR because I've never quite done something like this before, so they don't know exactly how they want it done.
Right.
But probably per game. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. Um,
Thank you. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Junior Achievement here in Roanoke does a big bowl-a-thon, and I think they raise quite a lot of money with it. So
Really? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So I think the key is to have lots of bowlers, right?
Yes. The
Just
more you have,
everybody who can roll a ball down the lane, have them do it, and have them raise, $100, and pretty soon that adds up into thousands, and that's the way to do it. So
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, how are you feeling walking around? You say you've got a cane, and I mean, it's God love you because you're doing all this help for other people, other patients, and you're in pain all the time yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I feel like, I just try and push it aside because, I did spend some time post COVID a little depressed, not knowing how to start over again. So the weird thing, and, people don't get this unless you have the illness, is some days are worse than others. So, I don't need the cane every day, but on the days that I need the cane or I need assistance, it's not good.
Yeah. All right. And you're applying for disability, so you're not able to work.
So, basically during like 2021 and 2022, I tried many different types of jobs and was having so much brain fog and was having so much physical difficulty that no matter what I tried, I just wasn't able to continue working. So I was recommended to get an attorney and try, to file for disability
Yeah.
if I
And
can.
how's that going?
It's grueling.
Really?
Yeah, they don't make it easy at all. Um, they don't really give full permanent disability with people that, let's say, just have sarcoidosis. This is what I'm hearing from my attorney. He's like, if you had another diagnosis besides this, we would have probably heard back by now because it's been, I would say, about like 14, 15 months
Mm-hmm.
since I've
Yeah.
worked.
Mm.
It's a long time.
Wow. And so your support system now is you have a boyfriend, a partner that you live with, and so at least you've got a mechanism to
Yeah.
eat and have shelter and those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I would have to really like depend on anyone that much. And it's not easy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's-
Well, good luck with getting that the disability approved. I would think that the cane and the walking and the brain fog and all of that seems like that would be enough.
Yeah.
I've never been through the process. I don't know a lot about it, but can't do it, you can't do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, good luck with the bowl-a-thon
Thank you. Thank you.
and getting, that support group. Man, I tell you, that's so important. And you can do it in person, you can do it online. And if everybody has brain fog, then nobody has it, in your group.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
if you can get the Zoom call going, you get 5 or 6 people on there, and they have somebody to talk to, and you have somebody to talk to, and you're exchanging names of doctors and opportunities and so forth. That that would be so helpful. It really would to people.
Yeah.
It's very cathartic.
It is. It really is. And it's so necessary. Yeah.
Right. So do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with listeners?
I guess just to, even though it can be tough, just, try not to give up. Try not to give up. And, there are many times that I wanted to, but, I just kept going. So, and I can't thank you enough for this.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Well, thanks to Andrea. I can't imagine being stuck for so long at home fighting COVID and sarcoidosis all at the same time, all attacking her lungs. But she is fighting through this and doing her best. And she's now also still working as an FSR community outreach leader, and she's putting together that fundraiser, a bowling fundraiser, despite the fact that she's even having a hard time even working. So we want to say thank you to Andrea and to wish her all the best going forward. The official Sarc Fighter song is Zombie by Mark Steyer and his band, the White Hot Lizards. Mark is a fellow Sarc Fighter. Go back and listen to his story in episode 12. Normally, I release every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty boxer Dougal is curled up in the chair in my office. Dougal makes my life so much better, and not far away is my other rescue dog, Shandy, and hopefully she's not off chewing up a shoe, but she is somewhere here not far away. And the backstory to the founding of the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research is episode 11 with Andrea and Redding Wilson. Don't forget to follow the Sarc Fighter on Facebook, Instagram, and Peloton as Sarc Fighter. My cycling blog, Carlin the Cyclist, has a section called Cycling with Sarcoidosis. If you're new here trying to figure out what Sarc is, try listening to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart. My story is episode 1. Send me an email if you'd like to comment on the show or if you'd like to appear on the show. It's carlinagency@gmail.com. You can find a link in the show notes. Until next time, keep fighting.
Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking, counting down.